to talk about the voluntary manslaughter. In fact, we want to talk about manslaughter. Remember, I classified homicide into three previous video. Then we've talked about negligent homicide. Today we are talking about manslaughter as part of homicide. So now in this manslaughter, I am going to divide it into three. Initially I divided it into two, but after some time I said, no, let me classify it into three. You understand? That's the manslaughter. Remember, there's a common thing between the one we've done before, that's the negligent homicide, and this manslaughter. In this common thing, what they have in common is that there is no intention to kill. And also, that's what we call the malice aforethought or the mens rea. There's no premeditation that I'm going to kill this person. It just occurred. You understand? So now, when we talk about the manslaughter, we are talking about when there is an unlawful killing, but there is no intention for such killing, So there's nothing like, he planned it. There's nothing like he was coming to kill this person. It just happened. So now, in this manslaughter, we are going to classify it into three. We are going to talk about the voluntary manslaughter, we are going to talk about the involuntary manslaughter, and we are going to talk about the vehicular manslaughter. I just added that vehicular manslaughter. So now, today, we talk about voluntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter is when you kill at the heat of passion. That is, in a layman's language, when you are annoyed or when you are provoked. For instance, you come in to your house, and coming to your house, you discover your wife with another man on your matrimonial bed, and you pick something, either bottle of beer or anything weapon, you now hit the man on the head, the man dies. Or the one our passenger told us while he was in jail prison, he said he met a man, one old man there, they call, I think the man's name is Baba. You see this, or you see this thing in, what's it called, in our passenger's book, My Watch, Volume 1. He said, well, he was in jail prison. That one, Abacha put him in prison. So he said he met this man. When he was conversing with the man was a very good man. The man told him that, look, what brought me to this prison was that I had an issue with my wife. You know how women talk now. So the man got angry, and now he used his size to hit the wife. The wife fell down and died. So he was convicted, because if you go to section 317 of the criminal code, punishable under section 318. The punishment for voluntary manslaughter is life imprisonment. So because the man was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, that man was sentenced to life imprisonment. But when our passenger intervened, the normal commotion of sentences, and at the end, I think the man must have been released or something, but that is by the way. So now, voluntary manslaughter is when you kill at the heat of passion, when you are provoked. You understand? When you are provoked. Just like the scenario I gave, you saw your wife with another man on your matrimonial home. You get angry. At that point, anything you do there, if the person dies, what the law enforcement agent or even the state can charge you for is voluntary manslaughter. So you can see that's the reason why I started all this homicide talk, education service. Because of that state I told you, where an attorney general of the state under his watch, because he was from the same town with the deceased, allow healthcare professionals to be charged for murder first. But when the government intervened and reduced it to manslaughter, in Nigeria, section 317 and section 318 is talking about voluntary manslaughter, not involuntary manslaughter. I've told in my previous video under negligent homicide that where you see voluntary manslaughter in Nigerian laws will be section 343 of the criminal code, subsection 1. I mentioned E and other ones there. You understand? So now let's continue on this voluntary manslaughter. So in this voluntary manslaughter, you have killed at the heat of passion. That's why if you go to section 283 of the criminal code, it talks about provocation. So when you are provoked, that is, it defines provocation, 283. Now 284 now says when you do anything under provocation, it can be a defense in criminal case. You can say, yes, I did this thing, yes, I killed this person, but I was provoked. And that place said, provided the anger has not died down. Not when I insult you in Lagos and you travel to Zamfara to go and bring a knife and start coming back to hit me, or you travel to Enugu to go and bring a knife. By that time, it is assumed that the anger must have died down. So once you annoy somebody and it is assumed that the anger has not died down and the person takes any action at that point, then that person can use it as a defense in criminal case. So now, that is voluntary manslaughter. So you can see that Attorney General that went and reduced the murder charge to to manslaughter, which is voluntary manslaughter now you can see that will not stand in court, because if the defense counsel, is vast in criminal law and medical jurisprudence, what they will do, they will allow the medical professionals to take their plea. The next one, they will apply for no case submission. You can't charge somebody for something that person did not do, because there is a passion. You must prove passion. There must be a passion for voluntary manslaughter, which is what Section 317 defines, and that is what is punishable under Section 318 of the Criminal Code. So now, there's a decided case, a well-decided case. In fact, that case by the Supreme Court turned the course of our criminal justice. That case is called Adigel Njoko and others versus State. Now, let me tell you about that. It was decided by the Supreme Court in 2013. Let me tell you about that case. What happened in that case was, during the Lovers' Day in 2003, remember the final judgment came 10 years after, that's 2013. So, but in 2003, during the Lovers' Day, that's Valentine's Day, February 14th, they were having family talks. From there, it moved to disagreement. They were asking the man, why are you not paying this your children's school fees again? What happened? The man's name is Boniface Babuji Njoko. Why the wife is Abigail Njoko? She had 2 children for the man. So it was like, oh God, why they pay your children's school fees now? What did they happen now? From there, little family talk before it didn't degenerated, and the children supported the mother. From there, the man said, this talk, I don't like this. So the man wanted to go out. They brought the man back. The man tried to, 3 of them restrain the man. And in order to make sure the man did not go out that night, they used a chain and chained the man. Everybody went to sleep. When they slept, in the morning, when they woke up, do you know what happened? They went to check their father. Lo and behold, the father was dead. So, based on what I told you in Section 174 of Nigerian Constitution and Section 211 of the Nigerian Constitution, 174 tells you that the Attorney General of the Federation is in charge of is the owner of criminal proceedings. While Section 211 tells you that the Attorney General of the state is the owner of the criminal proceedings. You understand? They have the right to initiate, to take over, to stop anything involving criminal proceeding in court. That is their right. Nobody. So this is not like if I collect your money, if I kill you, or if I slap you, you are just a nominal complainant. The owner of that case, person will get that now the Attorney General of the state or the federal level, depending on the law, they are charging either the federal law or the state law. So what am I trying to say? So in that situation, this thing continued, and at the end of the day, they went to court. The matter got to court, the lower court, which is the high court now, because they were charged first to the high court. When they got to the high court, the court looked at all the the evidence before the court. The court sentenced them for manslaughter. The manslaughter there is voluntary manslaughter, because they killed that man in the heat of passion. Because it is out of anger they tied the man. Like they did not have intention they were going to kill their father. They wanted the father to remain, and maybe in the morning the father, they will now reason together. And unfortunately the man died, that night. So the other party was not comfortable. They appealed the judgment. The thing landed to Court of Appeal. On getting to Court of Appeal said no, the judgment of the High Court that convicted them of, that sentenced them for manslaughter, no, that it should be murder. So those 3 members of the same family, that is the mother and the 2 children, were now sentenced to murder, and they are going to die by hanging. They appealed the matter got to Supreme Court. Now the Supreme Court gave a final decision. Now the Supreme Court said no. The Court of Appeal was wrong in their decision, whereas High Court was right. And at the end of the day, they were convicted for manslaughter by the Supreme Court. Now that case was very important, because the case said why you cannot convict somebody for murder without proving beyond any reasonable doubt the essential elements of murder, which we are going to talk about when we talk about murder. That is mens rea adaptis reus. This thing was not proven. So you don't just go ahead and do this or that. So at the end of the day, and also that very case brought another caveat in the Nigerian criminal system. It says that whenever there is issue, there's agreement, it must be resolved in favor of the accused. So what am I trying to say? So for voluntary manslaughter, you killed out of anger. You killed at the heat of passion. You killed as a result of provocation, which if you go to section 284, it says you are not criminally responsible for any act you do when you are provoked. When you are provoked, you are not criminally responsible. Then the law now is for you to prove to the court you did it under provocation. If you did it under provocation, but still remember, if you move your murder case to manslaughter now life imprisonment, while the murder case now death, either by hanging or anything, depending on the discretion of the judge. So what are we saying? You can see that Attorney General that charged those healthcare professionals first for murder was wrong. Even when the government he reduced it to manslaughter, it's also wrong. Because the manslaughter I told you in that section 317 and section 318 of the criminal code, it's talking about voluntary manslaughter, not involuntary manslaughter. The only thing you can charge a healthcare professional, a licensed healthcare professional, is involuntary manslaughter, which I told you in the previous video that it can also be used interchangeably as a negligent homicide. See you in the next video where we are going to sit down to talk about other aspects of manslaughter. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, share for others to learn, and also subscribe and comment. Thank you. Let's see you in the next video. Thank you once more.